Jim Howard here in Fort Worth, Texas.
Thank you very much for watching.
Hello, Jim Howard here in Fort Worth, Texas. Today's date, it's April 7th of 2022. I kind of like this. It's rare. I've mentioned this before. Myself, I guess I'm supposed to list myself last or something. Myself, my ex-wife, and we've been divorced, I think, about 40 years. And my grown son, we share this apartment to, save money. Instead of each one of us paying for rent that's over $1,000 a month, and, paying for electricity, which is about $200 a month, and so forth and so on. We share this apartment. But right now, my grown son is in a psych hospital for treatment, and my ex-wife, she was in the hospital yesterday, but just for not a psych hospital. She was in the hospital for breathing difficulty yesterday for about 4 hours, but then she had to wait to be transported home, and she can't walk. She's wheelchair bound, so the hospital, arranged for, she's had to be transferred before, by an ambulance home. And I forget how much that is. They charge, they charge for that. So she, and sometimes she can get where she's transported by a private company. And I think the insurance may pay for it sometimes, and then, no, if it's by ambulance, that costs just like being taken. But the private company charges, I forget how much, I think $175, I think. Anyway, she went yesterday and, came back. I wanted to mention this pulse ox thing. If you watched it, where I talk about the pulse oximeter, and I want to sort of maybe update it with a little bit, but I mentioned yesterday, I'm sure in the video, I'm not a doctor, I'm not medically trained in anything, I don't know anything about it, but I mentioned that I did get trained and certified as a EMT, okay. And I mentioned that I had to do 5 days working in the emergency room in order to, take the test and in order to become an EMT. And the pulse oximeter was, I think, fairly new. And so when I worked in the emergency room there, I was, checking the patients in and doing their vitals and that type of stuff. And one of the things I had to do was, in addition to, respiration and blood pressure and temperature and all these other things, they had to be hooked up to a pulse ox device, not a little tiny one like this, but I was just explaining to these people that I was enjoying this right now because I'm home alone. Okay, there, my heart rate is 60, but my pulse ox is 96. Anyway, I mentioned yesterday about the pulse ox, how these are neat little devices, and I think every family should probably have one when your first aid kit, you know. But I mentioned that when they started me, you know, doing this in-service training, for part of my training, I'd hook people up to the, you know, I'd do the vitals, and I'd hook them up to the, well, it pulls them up right away. I would hook them up to the pulse ox. And they never told me what, I mean, I knew the other things. I mean, I know if the blood pressure is, you know, too low or too high or whatever, but I didn't really know, they didn't mention anything about that, so I'm not sure how long I did it, but I was checking patients in, and I, you know, it would show on the screen, by the way, you know, by next to the bed on the thing, that would show up there, the pulse ox reading. And for some reason, I don't remember what it was. Well, everybody was coming in, I believe, with like, you know, 98 or, you know, something like that. And let me do this again. Anyway, it's nice being here alone. They're going to be, it's 3:13 p.m. Okay, the pulse ox is 96 for me. But it was, I don't know if I ever got 100 when I was doing it, but anyway, so I was doing all these people, you know, doing that, and there was nothing. And then for some reason, somebody's pulse ox was not, you know, 99 or something like that. I think it might have been like 95, I'm guessing. Because I thought, and then I turned to the nurse and I said, what is the pulse ox supposed to be, or what's it not supposed to be? And she said, well, what is it? And I think I said like 95 or something. And she said, oh, that's way too low. And I think she even pushed over the small crash cart that we had, you know, and the doctor came over. And I think that was 95, I believe. Because I remember thinking all these years that, you know, that doesn't sound bad, you know. I flunked high school 4 years in a row. I never saw a number like 90, 100 or 95 or whatever, you know. And I kind of thought it was the same way. But anyway, I mentioned that, so I mentioned in yesterday's video that, you know, if you've got a 95 or something, you know, I said, well, I'm not a medical person, so, you know, read the instructions that came with the pulse ox thing. And then also, you know, look up on the internet, especially if you got somebody in your family that, you know, this might be an important thing. Somebody with asthma, bronchitis, COPD, you know, whatever, to, you know, look it up and see. Well, anyway, what made me do that video was, yesterday was the ex-wife's pulse ox was down, and she called the insurance, I'm not sure what nurse she called, the insurance nurse, or, boy, that cat is doing its claws. Don't know if you can hear that or not. But anyway, I got, of course, the ex-wife, you know, yesterday to use the pulse ox thing, and she asked me then, well, what's, you know, and I said, well, I think if it's below 95, anyway, she called a nurse, the insurance nurse or somebody, it may be, I'm not sure who. And she told the nurse, I heard her telling the nurse, well, the pulse ox, it goes down to 90, and then it goes back up, and then it goes down to 91, and then it goes back. I was doing that or whatever. And the nurse said, call an ambulance immediately. Call 911 and have an ambulance come and take you to the emergency room. So that's what happened. But this is what I wanted to tell you. When she went down there and she was in the emergency room for about 4 hours, and then she was dismissed, but she had to wait to get about 4 or 5 hours to get a ride back home. But when she got down there, the emergency room said, 90's okay. Don't take me for, or what I'm telling you now. 90's okay. And so I don't know, they better get their act together, although, So just be aware of that. The reason the doctor down there said, she has breathing difficulty already. It's not like somebody that's, perfectly okay and you have chest pain or something and you do a pulse ox and, no, it was, she has problems. She has a breathing machine and takes a whole bunch of, medicines. But, anyway, the doctor said, well, I think you have sleep apnea. That's one reason, because she was explaining, well, I used my machine and then I laid down and then I looked at the pulse ox and it was such and such, and then I took another nap, or it was the pulse ox, So the doctor thinks she's got sleep apnea now and something else. So just be prepared, to, don't ignore a low pulse ox number. Call your doctor or call, if you have insurance, call the health insurance nurse or, whatever, and then listen to whatever they say. And especially if they say, call 911 right now and tell them you need an ambulance, So I wanted to do that. Anyway, I'm home alone, and it's 3:18 p.m., and the transportation service, because Darlene is, has to have transportation service. We don't have a car. Not only do we not have a car that has a chairlift forward or anything like that, we don't have a car. And my grown daughter, she has a car, and she went with Darlene, but she's going in the van that Hillary's not driving her own car. So it's just going to be a few more minutes that I'll be able to totally talk freely. None of my kids, and I've got 4, and they're grown people. I've got 4 of them. None of them want to be on the camera. They don't want to be mentioned on a YouTube video or anything like that. So it kind of puts I just prefer doing this and not having to worry if my son or somebody is going to hear me talking about them and freak out or something. So what else? Because this is, I know, yeah. I went to a Catholic military high school and DeLaSalle Military Academy in Kansas City, Missouri. I was in the class of 1959, and this is the class roster for the class of 1959, updated. So there are, I think I counted up, one time I mentioned this before, I believe there was 106 in our class, of the freshman class. And the first year was like 1955, and there was the grade school that I went to, St. Vincent's Catholic grade school. When I took the test, for DeLaSalle to get in, And I didn't know, but another Fred, or Frederick, we were friends at that school, and I didn't know that he had taken the test and was going to be going there with me. You know, we were going to be going together, just the two from that school. The way the school was set up, there was 4 classes, 4 homeroom classes or whatever. And the way it worked out is, I mean, they never said the word, they never said it, but I mean, I could figure it out. 2 of the classes were the dummies, and so we didn't get any Latin or Greek or physics or that kind of stuff. We got typing and bookkeeping and that type of stuff. And the other students there, the other 2 classes that were the smart ones, and that's where Fred, he was in that. So, and I was in the dummy class. And to prove that I deserved in the dummy class, I went to summer school all 4 years. I didn't graduate with the class. I mean, when I finished that summer, then they sent me my diploma. And Fred went into the Marine Corps and went on to get a PhD. And now in the high school, also a year ahead of me, he was my cousin, and he was a year younger than I was. But he graduated from high school as an officer, colonel or something, and I think people like myself, I was a sergeant. I mean, I got straight A's in military. The only thing I didn't, I flunked typing. I flunked everything. But I positively was not interested in school at all. I was interested in the military because I wanted to go into the military. But I got sidetracked there, I believe. But anyway, this is the class roster for the class of '59. And let me tell you, first of all, how many of you have seen the movie The Hoodlum Priest? About Father Clark, Dismas Clark. He was a subject of the movie The Hoodlum Priest, but because he in St. Louis, Missouri, I believe, that's where he operated out of, a Jesuit priest. And I think it was our first year, freshman year, 1955, and he died, I think, in 1963. But I'm not sure at what age he died. Well, I think he died in 1963. Alexa, how old was Father Dismas Clark?
Here's something I found on the web. According to Wikipedia.org, at 109 years old, Dad Clark, as he was called, was the oldest living survivor of the 1921 Tulsa massacre at the time of his death.
Alexa, how old was the Hoodlum Priest, Father Dismas Clark?
The Hoodlum Priest was released 61 years and 3 weeks ago.
I give up. Anyway, every year when class started at DeLaSalle, the first week was a retreat or whatever, and that was devoted entirely to religion. And so Father Clark was there for that year. I believe it was that year. If not, it was the next year, but I think it was that year, 55. The freshman year for me. So we went to the auditorium for Mass and what have you, and then he got up on the stage, and he had these gigantic, back then, he had these gigantic photos, but back then, color photography and in large size, I don't think you could do it, or maybe you could do it, but at a tremendous expense or something. But what they did back then is, when you had your film developed or whatever, and if you had an enlargement made or whatever, there were like artists who would work for the photo firm, and they would colorize, the picture. My parents had one of me, a smaller one that was colorized by somebody, painting it. So I'm sure it didn't cost a lot of money, and but anyway, he had these giant poster like, and so he's up on the stage, and he has, I want to say tripod, what the thing you set him on, and he has him there, and he starts out, and then he starts crying. Oh my God, this poor sweet boy, he's only, making 18, 16, 70, whatever. This poor boy, poor boy, he's in prison, he's in, I forget where the state prison was or whatever. I feel sorry for anybody that would be there, yeah. Some people, you want them there, you know what I mean, yeah. But anyway, he was doing this sobbing, and then he would say, I'm trying to think of a racist name or a Spanish name right now or something to add some color to this. Anyway, let's just take a Jerome. He said, this poor boy, Jerome, he's in prison for the rest of his life. It's horrible there. It's terrible. And he'd tell you, how bad it was. And then he would say, Jerome, he has nobody. He is all alone. Oh my God, it's so horrible. He has no father. He has no mother. He has no sister, and he has no brother. They're all dead. He killed them. Now, I may be exaggerating a little bit on how how he said it or whatever. But let's say, this is not true, but let's say I was sitting there thinking, oh, the father's doing a joke. This is humor, whatever. It wasn't. So then I realized, okay, did I make a mistake coming to DeLaSalle Military Academy? How can the brothers, the Christian brothers, how can they let a guy like that, into the school? You need to have security. That's before you had security, probably at a school. But I was thinking, this guy needs to be watched. He's dangerous, and, we're freshmen, at this place. We have an M1 assigned to us, but it doesn't have a firing pin. So then after that first day or whatever, they, as we're walking back to the classrooms or whatever they were going to do, because the entire week was religion or whatever, but we're walking back, but we're on the street, the side street there or whatever, and the Christian brothers who are escorting us in their robes, I'm sorry. One of the brothers says, no talking in line. And then I heard pop, and a freshman goes flying out into the street. We were on a side street. And I remember, my memory is not that great in a lot of things, but I remember looking at this boy, small, probably my size or smaller maybe, he's a freshman. I wasn't. He's laying in the street, and there was a black man, an old black man, on the sidewalk on the other side of the street, and the old black man had a cane, and I looked at his face, and I just saw the shock, you know, of that on his face, of what he had seen. Welcome to DeLaSalle. Anyway, I guess the reason we were going back maybe to class is Father Clark was hearing confessions. I didn't get they didn't say, would you like to go into this room with Father Clark and do your confession? If I'd have been asked, I'd have said, no thanks, you know. Anyway, I went in. He was by himself, of course. And he wasn't inside a confessional booth or anything. It was just a classroom or part of a classroom. And then he grabs me and he hugs me, and I forget what he says, you know, whatever. And I kind of pulled back and everything, and I made the fastest confession probably possible. Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. It's been a month since my last confession, and I've had some impure thoughts. And goodbye, Father. Give me my, absolve me of my sins, and let me get the fuck out of this place, you know. So that was the freshman year. Anyway, the high school finally, you know, I forget when. A few years after, it had been in a military academy for forever, you know. And then a few years after, and I'm thinking maybe 6 years, the school had to do away with the ROTC, you know, the police or the military academy part. But it continued on for quite a few years. And then finally it, you know, it was just economically not, you know, people were kicking in money. People were doing all kinds of things to keep it going because it had a long tradition. And it's closed, but well, it didn't exactly close. It got, the building and everything got, you know, taken over. And the brothers continued to teach there, but it went to where they were, I see, I forgot, I said I was going to set up and I didn't do it yet. Okay. I know you don't spell that way, but by the way, it was a very crappy. Actually, it was not a bad movie, The Hoodlum Priest. I mean, it wasn't a good movie, but well, for whatever, what was the year? I ended up watching the movie, but anyway, anyway, the school changed, and I forget where the funding came from or whatever, and very few students, and of course, almost all black students, but it won, like the DeLaSalle won some type of prestigious award for what they accomplished, because it was like almost like one-on-one, you know, and those young people who were going there were people who needed help and were, you know, glad to get it, and it was a wonderful program, and I think they tried to develop you know, the other people who learned from what the Christian Brothers did there in that instance. And then eventually it was turned over, I think, and I may be wrong exactly on how this is, it was turned over to the city to kind of try to do that program or something like that. And they were working mainly with, I mean, it looked like, because it was in the news, national news. And who was the president? I don't think it was Trump. Anyway, it was a Republican presidency, so maybe Bush. I can't remember, but anyway, no, okay, I'll tell you who the president was. President Obama. Now, he had nothing to do with the school, except teachers who were teaching, I think the entire, I think all the students there were probably black, or if not, it was like reversed the way it used to be. It used to be, a few black students in a all white, This was the other way around. So one of the young teachers there, black teacher, he taught the kids, the young kids, they were in uniform, they were in uniform. Not a military uniform, but a school uniform. And this young teacher, black teacher, male, he taught the students a chant, Obama, Obama or something, I don't know what, Obama, And that got on the news, hey, we've got a new president here, and he's our first black president. And all across the United States, young black children are, energized, and they're, and they've got, somebody that they can recognize, somebody that's got skin color of, their color and whatever. And that appeared on the news. And then the fucking shit hit the fan, because the Republicans or whatever, they're turning out a militant. They're turning out a militant group because of this. Listen to this chant, and Obama, they didn't. It wasn't kill whiteys or it was a grade school, I think. And I followed that story, and I believe if I remember correctly, the teacher, I think, apologized. I'm sorry. It was just, I thought that would motivate these kids to study their algebra and that kind of what it was. I'm sorry about that. He was fired. And but. Or until just this month or last month or whatever, occasionally the DeLaSalle Military Academy, even though then when they finally dropped the military, there was a few years where it was so those people were also, in the thing. But here is 4 pages of the class of 1959, and well, let's see. I think I did this before. I remember now doing this in a video. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. 30. 60. 90. 91, 92, 93, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. I lost count already. 22 plus, what was it, 106? I forget. You see why I went to high school, or summer school 4 years in a row. Anyway, so there's Michael Lucas, deceased, 1989. Now these are the class of 59. Here's a fellow classmate, died in January of 2012. Here's one that died in 2015, in 1995, 2010, 1997. Here's a student, they don't have anything at all, not even his name, Lawrence J. Plunkett. I remember him, but I kind of identified with him. I didn't have acne. He had, again, I'm not sure if you call me, he had some skin problem, and he seemed like he's always standing by, sort of like me, standing over in a corner, or whatever. Let's see. Classmate died in 2020, 2019, 2015, 1950, he died in, 19 would be, no, it would have been 2015. Okay. Died in 2003. Here's another person, no information at all on them. Let's see, 2014, 1991, 2010, 2000, 2017, 2020, 2019, 2009, 1986, 2010, 2020, 2019, 1992, Raymond Ferguson. I remember him because he was black. We had a few black. I'm guessing 13, 15 or something like that in our class. But he was really good at sports, and I think he went out for all of them. And he died in 2010. Let's see, 1993, 2020. Last page. 2017, 2014. 2001, 2016, and then my two identical twins that I hung out with, Larry and Jerry Winship. Jerry died in 2010, and then Larry died in 2013. By the way, I guess I can say it about Larry and Jerry. I hope this is not... There's a video here you'll see, by the way, if you look for it, of a recording we made in a booth at Fairyland Park. Yes, the place was called Fairyland Park. In 1959, our last year of DeLaSalle. They were identical twins. And they hung out with me, and I hung out with them. I'm not sure why. Peter Lorre. Have you ever seen a Peter Lorre movie? They had the body build of Peter Lorre. They had the facial of Peter Lorre. I went over to their house several times. went over one Sunday morning, and they were watching Peter Lorre movies every Sunday morning, I guess, for a while, till they ran out of them. Then they probably switched to some other, but that, I think that was they were there sitting next to their father watching Peter Lorre movies, and it looked like 3 clones of Peter Lorre. They had the same build, everything, and of course they loved. Why wouldn't they? Love him because he looked like he was a family member. They were one of like the last. Their father, he delivered ice. This is back when you had ice delivered in a truck. The truck would come down the street, and the iceman would look up in the windows, and you had a card. And if you turned it a certain way, it meant you wanted a full block of ice for not your refrigerator, but your ice box. That's before there were, I'm sure, refrigerators, but this is, most people had, well, I don't know, maybe not most people, maybe just people in Kansas City, Missouri. But you turn the card a certain way, you got a full thing. If you turn it another way, and you got half a block or a quarter block, and the iceman would bring it up over his shoulder. And it was the summer times, the kids would run over to the truck, and there would be pieces of, and you'd pick it up. I did it, pick it up, and you'd have a piece of ice. And the iceman would bring it up, and then if it wouldn't fit in your, he had his ice pick, and he would cut it, and he'd put it in your refrigerator for you. As a kid, my job was there was a tray underneath the ice box that had to be emptied. As ice melted, it went down in the pan, and if you didn't empty it, then it was going to, overflow on your floor. I also, as a kid, we would have coal delivered to this one place that we lived in. It was a duplex, and the truck with the coal would pull up, and there was like a door or whatever, and I don't know if they unlocked it or what but then they dumped the coal down there, so it went into a bin, and then it was my job in wintertime to go down there and shovel some coal into the furnace. It worked pretty well. So my God, I've used up all my, what time is it? It's 3:49. Anyway, if I remember correctly, there's a friend, one that we went from grade school together. We keep in contact with. Oh, that's something else I wanted to say. I worked for 17 years for one hospital, corporation. When I started, it wasn't a corporate. Well, it was incorporated, but not. They didn't own. They ended up buying half, or more than half, buying just about all the hospitals in Kansas City. But I worked for them 17 years, and there was a guy like the hospital. The main hospital when I started, which was just the hospital. There was 25 security officers that worked there. And then after 5 years, I went to a hospital that was built right in my small town. I could see almost the hospital from where I lived. That was great. And I worked there 10 years, I think it was, before they yanked me out of there and sent me back to the main hospital. And then from there, they sent me to another small hospital, and then I ended up going back out to that hospital that I'd worked at. That was, the small one. But why did I get on that subject? There was a reason. Oh, I found out, and I can't remember his name now, that one of the security officers also went to DeLaSalle Military Academy. And I did not know that. It would have been kind of, nice to say, well, what class were you in? The problem with that would probably have been if he came back and if he said, the class of '59, Jim, we sat next to each other, and what? Probably that would have been embarrassing. Just like my friend Fred that went on to, he went on to get a PhD and he spent the rest of the life working not in the military, but so what would it be? Not history. I'm not sure what the category would be now, forgotten. But what he did, like Fort Hood down here, a large military fort in Texas, he worked out there for years. He wrote a book, I believe, about the Indians and their places, and also his job was to go around and make sure that the military did not unnecessarily disturb any of the history of the Indians and their reservations and their whatever it was, that type of stuff. That's what he did, and he worked the rest of his life doing that, and writing books and going to other places and doing stuff like that. And I became a YouTuber. Anyway. So over the years, starting in I forget. Over the years, I had one of the first online sites. I was I think, first blogger, and because I was blogging, and I didn't create the word blogger. I didn't say I'm a blogger, but I was blogging. And many years later, somebody used the word blog, and then people started using the word blog, blogger or whatever. But how did I get on that subject? And then I was doing live streaming before anybody else was doing live streaming. And I've mentioned this before. When I say that, I did a search on, I was around before there was a World Wide Web or anything else. And so I was out there with a bulletin board system for years, and then online, and all that kind of stuff. And I was streaming live video and that kind of stuff. But then over those years, there was 2 or 3 people who just happened to stumble across me, who turned out to be, Now, I'm not sure. I think one of them was in the same class that I was, and I did not know, And I think the other 2 were maybe not in that 4-year range, but were cadets, fellow cadets. I remember one time, I mentioned the time that the Christian brothers, who are supposed to be pretty smart, they're not as smart as Jesuits. I'm kidding, I'm not kidding. The Christian brothers, I don't know if they checked with the officer who was in the military and in the baton, the death march in the Philippines or whatever. He had to use a magnifying, he was a prisoner and everything. But got sidetracked again. But anyway, okay, yeah. I remember now. So I'm not sure who it was at DeLaSalle, whether the Christian Brothers decided or whether they got some input from Colonel Pearl Me. I think that was it. Then there was a sergeant that assisted him, you know. And I think it was the Christian Brothers decided, instead of having the cadets march from the school downtown for the Labor Day, for the Veterans Day parade, which I enjoyed. I thought that was neat. You know, we the other students from the other, of course, they were not academies. You know, they had an ROTC program. I don't know, maybe 25 students or maybe 50 students or something, but not. I thought it was great. You know, that they went by bus downtown for the at the Liberty Memorial for the parade, and then marched in the parade, and then they, you know, they went home by buses, you know, or something. Our school didn't have any buses. We couldn't afford a bus. Never had a bus. I mean, the school rented a bus a few times, but we marched down. But I thought that was great, you know, through marching down the city street. Our school was a few blocks away from, our school was in the black neighborhood, DeLaSalle, and a few blocks away was a big, you know, city high school, and there was a little bit of, you know, I think resentment between the two schools. But anyway, like we'd march from the school, you know, in full uniform, M1s. Our officers had sabers, you know. God, I wanted a saber, but they didn't give a saber to, you know, you had to be an officer, and you didn't become an officer if you flunked every year of school. And I never opened, well, I take that back. As soon as I was given, you know, the books for the year, I went through them and I read anything in there immediately that would interest me, and then I put the books away, and I carried the books back and forth to DeLaSalle every day. And I probably, one reason the arthritis is, you know, and, but, so I think the Christian Brothers had the great idea. I was looking forward to marching, and then, you know, marching down, and then marching in the the Veterans Day parade, and then marching back to school. I thought that was pretty fucking neat. But the Christian Brothers, I guess, decided in their infinite wisdom that they would just send 500 high school boys home with an M1 rifle. And I thought that's not a good idea. And I had a choice. I could take the long public bus home, or I could take the one I rode in the morning, the Vine Street bus. You know the song, Kansas City, I'm going to go to Kansas City, going to get me a bottle of wine, and then it mentions, you know, Vine Street, you know, down Kenyon, whatever. But I was the only white person that rode the Vine Street bus for 4 years. But so anyway, I was heading over to and I was the only one that rode the bus like home. I mean, because at the school, but the other kids, the ones that didn't have cars or something, they were on the public buses with M1s sticking out, you know, of the window and whatever. And I thought, oh, this is not good. This is not good. And then, of course, we marched in the parade the next day. You know, we had to take the bus, a public bus, or, you know, a parent. I don't think my parents ever drove me to school, I don't believe. I always took the bus. But then we had an assembly when we got back in the auditorium, and the Christian Brothers, you know, were yelling at, you're not a, you know, you have to be a Christian Brothers boy, you have to, you know, you have to belong. And I was thinking, who are the idiots that sent us home? You know, like when I went on the Vine Street bus, I had the M1, you know. I didn't aim it out the window. I didn't aim it at anybody in this, you know, the thing. I did, you know. And I was thinking, you know, you guys, So, okay, it's 4:01. Oh man, I didn't get to throw a wild party or anything here, you know? Nothing. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Give a thumbs up. Please click on the link if there's one there so you can go to Amazon and buy a Mercedes or something so I'll get a commission. Or an airplane or whatever. Thank you very much.